Good morning, and I add my happy Father's Day to all the fathers and grandfathers and father figures, fathers-to-be and fathers that we remember on this day. A few weeks ago at our parish weekend in Shrinemont up in Shenandoah County, a small group of us met on Saturday morning in Adirondack chairs under the trees to talk about spaces, holy spaces, sacred spaces, and holy ground. We read poetry by Wendell Berry and Mary Oliver, and we talked about what makes a place holy, what makes hallowed ground. And during that conversation, the image of the woods as a cathedral came up. And at Shrinemont, we could feel that sense of sanctuary, the architecture of creation, as we spent those hours and days in the mountains, walking in the trees, climbing the hills, and listening to a very loud whippoorwill at night. The first time this image of the cathedral of creation entered my imagination was at my sister's wedding a few years ago, on the steps of a 100-year-old log cabin in Craig County, Virginia, with cows mooing across the creek and fields and national forest stretching away beyond us. The minister said that we were in a church, though we were not in a building. We were in God's cathedral, with the sky arching overhead and the mountains in the distance, and yes, not very poetic cattle as unexpected guests. In most translations of the psalm that we read today, the 100th psalm, all ye lands is often translated as all the earth. Be joyful in the Lord, all the earth. And when I was reading the 100th Psalm with that language in my ear, the memory of God's cathedral, cows and all, kept coming back to me, the image of the cathedral of creation. Be joyful in the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness and come before his presence with a song. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, go into his courts with praise, give thanks to him and call upon his name. I imagine God's courts as the fields and mountains, and beyond us the oceans and the deserts and the cities on the other side of the world. I imagine the world in its vastness and its diversity as an endless cathedral, a sacred space holding all people of all races and cultures and languages and backgrounds. Scholars have taken the 150 Psalms in the Old Testament and divided them into categories over the years. Psalms of lament, Psalms of thanksgiving, liturgical Psalms, and so on. Psalm 100 is thought of as a psalm of praise or a psalm of thanksgiving. I would also say that it functions as a call to worship, and it asks certain things of us. It gives us 7 what are called by the scholars imperatives. I think they're more invitations perhaps than commands, though, perhaps more inspirations than orders. And they are, be joyful, serve, or in some translations, worship, sing, or in some translations, shout, know, enter, give thanks, call on his name. 7 invitations: be joyful, serve, sing. Know that God has made us and that we are God's. Enter into God's courts, give thanks, and call on his name. Part of what draws us to the Psalms is their very human voice. The Psalms are honest. They are what we turn to for comfort and reassurance in times of pain and grief because they acknowledge pain and grief. The Psalms don't sugarcoat things. Over and over they speak with honesty and with vulnerability. Out of the depths have I called to you, Psalm 130. My spirit faints within me, my heart within me is desolate, Psalm 142. You have laid me in the dust of the grave, Psalm 22. So psalms of praise and thanksgiving like the one that we read today, we find side by side with psalms that express anguish. Psalms of praise and thanksgiving, in fact, arise out of sorrows. They were written in response to suffering, even sometimes in the midst of suffering. Psalm 100 isn't telling us that life is perfect, but rather that we can sing in the midst of imperfection. We can give thanks even when we feel sorrow. Song, worship, and thanksgiving when we are facing grief or uncertainty or fear do not erase that grief, but can transform our experience of it and can transform us. Diana Butler Bass, author of Grateful, The Subversive Practice of Giving Thanks, writes that gratitude is resilience of sorts, the defiance of kindness in the face of anger, of connection in the face of division, of hope in the face of fear. Gratitude empowers us. It makes joy and love possible. And theologian Walter Brueggemann calls this psalm a psalm of new orientation, the idea that we are turning, we are seeing something differently, reminding us that the lives of people and of communities like ours are never static. They are always on the move. We are constantly orienting ourselves and reorienting ourselves in response to life's unexpected detours. And there's a powerful word in the middle of those imperatives: be joyful, serve, sing. It is know. Know that the Lord is God, that God has made us and that we are God's people. Know that we are known in return, and that we are loved by a God who is faithful and will not leave us. The psalm is not written in the singular. It addresses the plural, all of us. It invites all the lands and all who live in them. Be joyful in the Lord, all the earth. It is an invitation not just to the individual, but to the congregation, to rejoice together, to sing together, to give thanks together. Paul also focuses on we in this morning's epistle, his letter to the Romans, writing, God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us, all of us, not just the ones who seem to be doing everything right, but all of us, those who wrestle with insecurities, those of us who mess up a lot, those of us who don't feel like we fit in everywhere. We are loved by God despite and through and because of our humanness and because we are God's creation. And so we worship and we give thanks on days of celebration. We sing and shout together as the beloved children of God wherever we are as one people, for we are in God's cathedral wherever we are. In this church, if we are out under the sky with cows mooing in the distance, if we are in cathedrals, wherever we are together, that is sacred ground, and that is space for transformation, which is an important truth to remember as we face those detours. It's an important truth to remember when we come together to celebrate unions. It's an important truth to remember when we celebrate days such as Juneteenth, which was a first step toward reconciling people and bringing them together in love. It is an important truth to remember as Trinity Church, whose very name celebrates the idea of communion, being together, the relationship of Trinity. Rejoice, serve, sing, know, enter, give thanks. Call upon the Lord. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his faithfulness endures from age to age. Amen.